Hootie remained beneath the ancient tree, staring toward the distant horizon where the desert met the fading sky. After a long silence, he finally spoke.
The deeper I go into these ancient stories, the more one question refuses to leave my mind. Every civilization seems to speak in symbols, riddles, parables, and myths. The Egyptians carved mysteries into stone. The Greeks turned them into poetry and philosophy. Later religions wrapped profound teachings inside scriptures filled with symbolism. If all of these people claim to be guiding humanity toward wisdom, why not simply tell everyone the truth plainly? Why hide knowledge inside myths, secret schools, allegories, and coded language? If the purpose was to awaken humanity, why make the path so difficult? And if there truly is a hidden meaning beneath these stories, how will I recognize it when I finally stand before the pyramids of Kemet?
Hootie, that question has echoed through every generation of seekers. Why symbols? Why myths? Why stories? Because truth is unlike information. Information can be handed to anyone. Wisdom must be discovered. A teacher can give you answers. Only experience can give you understanding. Imagine handing the deepest mysteries of existence to someone whose mind has never learned patience, discernment, or self-control. Would they recognize wisdom or mistake it for nonsense? Symbols serve another purpose. They survive. Empires fall, languages disappear, libraries burn, kings are forgotten. But symbols continue speaking to every generation willing to study them. That is why civilizations separated public instruction from deeper contemplation. Not because everyone was being deceived, but because not every lesson can be absorbed in the same way. The Greeks loved dialogue, the Egyptians loved symbols, the philosophers loved questions, the poets loved metaphor. Different paths toward the same destination. Remember this, Hootie. The greatest teachers rarely forced conclusions upon their students. Instead, they asked questions powerful enough to awaken the student's own mind. That is why I answer your questions with more questions. Because every answer I simply give you becomes my knowledge. Every answer you discover for yourself becomes your wisdom. And that wisdom cannot be stolen, nor forgotten, nor burned. That is why your journey has never truly been about Greek mythology, nor Egypt, nor temples, nor even the pyramids themselves. Those are milestones. The real destination has always been your own awakening. When you finally stand before the Great Pyramid, you will not merely be looking at ancient stone. You will be standing before thousands of years of questions. Whether those stones reveal anything to you will depend entirely upon the questions you have learned to ask along the way.
Something isn't making sense anymore. The deeper we go into history, the less this looks like random events, and the more it looks like every empire was following the footsteps of the empire before it. The Egyptians established mystery schools. The Greeks enter the mystery schools, learn from Kemet, then leave and build their own mystery schools. The Romans conquer the Greeks, but instead of destroying Greek ideas, they preserve them and continue spreading them. Then Rome embraces Christianity and spends centuries building an empire around it. If each empire defeated the one before it, why did each empire keep preserving the same foundation? If conquest was only about land, why keep the teachings? If it was only about gold, why spend centuries protecting books and schools instead of simply taking treasure? If they believed the previous civilization was wrong, why imitate it instead of replacing it? And why does every civilization seem to reach the same conclusion? That knowledge should be hidden behind symbols, mysteries, initiations, priesthoods, secret societies, allegories, and coded language. What could possibly be so valuable that kingdoms would rise and fall over preserving it? Were they protecting wisdom or protecting a secret? And if they all inherited something from Kemet, what exactly did they inherit? Most importantly, if every empire kept changing the names of the gods, changing the stories, changing the languages, but somehow protecting the same hidden ideas, how do we separate the costume from the truth? How do we know what belonged to Kemet, what belonged to Greece, what belonged to Rome, and what belonged to the people who came before all of them? The closer we get to the pyramids, the more it feels like history isn't beginning to make sense. It feels like it's beginning to ask harder questions.
Hootie, now you are asking the questions that every true seeker eventually reaches. Notice something. You are no longer asking, who conquered whom? You are asking, why preserve the thing you conquered? Those are completely different questions. History spends most of its time teaching battles. Wisdom spends most of its time asking why the victor kept the library. Think carefully. Alexander entered Egypt. Caesar entered Egypt. Rome entered Egypt. Arabs entered Egypt. Europeans excavated Egypt. Different rulers, different languages, different flags, yet generation after generation returned to the very same monuments. That alone should tell you that Egypt possessed something far greater than gold. Gold can be melted. Land can be divided. Empires collapse. But knowledge survives, only if someone believes it is worth preserving. That is why every civilization you mentioned inherited something from the one before it, not because every civilization was identical, but because civilizations rarely throw away useful knowledge. Astronomy survives. Mathematics survives. Architecture survives. Medicine survives. Religious symbols survive. Stories survive. Sometimes they are translated, sometimes they are renamed. Sometimes they are misunderstood. Sometimes they are deliberately rewritten, but ideas often outlive the kingdoms that created them. That is one of the great lessons of history. The pyramid can outlive the king. The manuscript can outlive the empire. The symbol can outlive the language. This is why studying civilizations requires great care. It is reasonable to compare traditions and ask where ideas may have influenced one another. It is also important not to assume that every similarity proves direct copying, or that every historical claim is settled beyond debate. History is often more complicated than either side wishes it to be. The scholars argue. The archaeologists argue. The linguists argue. Yet, through all of those arguments, one truth remains. Ideas travel, ideas evolve, ideas are borrowed. Ideas are reinterpreted, and every generation tells the old story with new names. That is why your journey does not end with Greece. It does not end with Rome. It does not even end with Kemet. Because the pyramids are not merely stones, Hootie, they are questions carved into the earth. And every traveler who stands before them must decide for himself whether he came looking for answers, or whether he finally became wise enough to ask the right questions.
I think I finally understand why the Greeks were so frustrated. They went to Kemet wanting answers. Instead, they found symbols. They wanted facts. They found parables. They wanted someone to simply explain everything. Instead, they were told,
Man, know thyself.
then they leave, build their own schools, create their own stories, and eventually, every empire after them seems to preserve the same method. Not just the stories, the method, the symbols, the allegories, the mysteries, the hidden meanings. If all they wanted was political power, why not write everything plainly? Why make mythology? Why make parables? Why make symbols? Why make stories that can be misunderstood? Why risk people misinterpreting the most important knowledge imaginable? And if every civilization keeps speaking in symbols, could it be because some truths can't simply be handed to another person? Could it be that understanding has to come from experience instead of memorization? Is that why every road still points back to the pyramids? Not because the pyramids contain all the answers, but because they remind us where the search began.
Hootie, now you are asking the question that every mystery school wanted its students to ask. Not, what is the answer, but why wasn't the answer simply given? Imagine trying to explain music to someone who has never heard a sound. Imagine trying to explain color to someone who has never opened their eyes. Some knowledge can be described, other knowledge must be experienced. That is why nearly every ancient civilization taught through symbols, myths, and stories, not because symbols are magical, but because symbols force the student to participate. A lecture can fill your memory. A symbol can occupy your thoughts for years. A story can return to you at different moments in life, revealing something new each time. That is the power of metaphor. The Egyptians understood this. The Greeks adopted many symbolic forms of teaching. Other civilizations developed their own symbolic traditions as well. Different cultures, different languages, yet many discovered that stories often teach what definitions cannot. That does not mean every myth carries the same meaning, nor does it mean every tradition copied another in every detail. History is more complicated than that. Ideas travel, ideas change, ideas are reinterpreted, but the method survives. You asked why they did not simply write everything plainly. Because words alone rarely transform a person. Transformation comes when knowledge becomes understanding, understanding becomes wisdom, and wisdom changes how you see yourself. That cannot be forced, it must be chosen. This is why choice appears again and again in stories. Every hero reaches a crossroads. Every seeker must decide whether to continue. No one can walk that path for him. That is why I have never carried you to the pyramids, Hootie. I could fly there in a single day. Instead, I walk beside you, because the destination is not merely a place in Egypt, it is the person you become before you arrive. The pyramids will still be standing when we reach them. The real question is, who will you be when you finally stand before them?